What's up, guys? I'm gonna be going over my Slayer tone, which is a response to Lamb Chopper 678's tone. He got a really good tone for Slayer using the Mark II Katana, but he didn't use the combo, so I used my Artist. So it's very important to know that because it has the Waza speaker, and your speaker configuration is going to change a lot of the sound, and also the types of pedals that you're using. If you're using any real pedals, can actually change the sound a lot as opposed to the digital pedals. So I made one that doesn't require any real pedals. It's all contained in here. It's called the TS only one, the Tone Studio only. That's what it means. And the one that I personally use is the TS plus PBFX pedal board effects. So I have a real pedal board, and there's some minor changes between these, but they both work fairly well. The only thing is the real pedal board is a lot tighter, and there's nothing I can do about it to get it as tight with just the katana. But I guess I'll go over some of the universal things. Number one, and this is something I would do if I was making any tone, I pick chain 1 because I like having an EQ as close to the front as possible, and so I use EQ1 as an amp in EQ, and that either puts it here or it puts it here. It puts it before or after the booster. I don't know. I've tried to figure it out. I can't figure it out. But I use a real tube screamer, so I know for a fact that that comes before the amp in EQ. So at least I know that. And all the amp stuff is happening here. So the gain, the amp type, the crunch channel, and the gain's pretty high. I turned it down on the one that doesn't require any pedals, just to tame some of that fizz that I had going on. And I did some EQ changes too, but just some universal things I like to do. I like to use amp in EQ to shape the tone, which is you boost the mids. You basically increase the distortion on those mids, and that creates your tone. And the amp out EQ, I use another 10 band. And this I just use as a volume leveler. I bring back some of the bass I cut. I cut some of the mids I raised up, and it really just levels out everything. So it's not really shaping the tone, it's more just making sure that the frequencies I want to get through are getting through correctly. And also, I use a mod and an FX as a parametric EQ. Those are to cut very specific frequencies, and I think you're going to find that around the 400 hertz there's a little bit of a wub wub going on. The 630 is harsh, and I think is universally you're going to want to cut that a little bit. And 1.6 is a problem too, and 1.25 is kind of a problem. So if you couldn't cut 1.25 for some reason, you could probably just cut the 1K in your EQ2 a little bit more, and it would probably solve a similar problem. But so that's coming after the amp. I'm pretty sure the way it all works, the amp out EQ is either sitting here before the delays and reverb, or it's sitting after the reverb. I don't know. I really don't know. I tried to figure it out. I don't know. But I know the amp out EQ is coming on later. And also, I do use a global EQ. I just cut at 80 hertz, and I wanted to simulate cutting at 7 6.3K at the high cut, but there is no 7. There's 6.3 or 8. So I simulated it by doing 6.3 but boosting up 1. So I thought that was a pretty good idea. So I know for a fact that that will encompass any reverb that I have. And it allows me to just get a little bit more surgical where I want to cut at the low and high end, as opposed to these 10 bands where it's more difficult to shape that exactly. Especially at the high end is where things can get very touchy. I like the crunch channel. The crunch channel gives you a lot, and it doesn't give you weird high frequencies like the lead does. The lead's a great channel, but it can give you some of these weird high frequencies. And if you do use the lead channel, you're going to need less gain, because the crunch sucks some gain for some reason. I think the brown channel is noisy, so I don't like to use it, but I think it has a good sound. In the clean, I feel like I'm always fighting to get more out of it, so the crunch I really enjoy using. I like to keep my volume at 50. I think universally it's helpful to keep the volume around 50 for different patches. It's more of a effective simplicity. I didn't bother using this equalizer because I have other equalizers going on, so I just kept these at 50. I really enjoyed the deep cab resonance. I think the vintage sounds like it's in another room in a way, and the modern sounds great and present, but it has some high frequencies, and the deep gives you that presence without having those high frequencies in the modern. It's a similar reason why I like the crunch over the lead channel. I like the deep over the modern. I think the deep cab resonance gets you all the benefits with none of the negatives. Presence at 40, I thought it worked well for the sound. It's more distorting the high frequencies in some weird way that I don't fully grasp, but 40 was a good noise. If I increased the presence too much, it kind of started battling with the tearing sound, which occurs somewhere around the 630, 700 hertz. So I felt like it was taking away. So 40 presence was good. What else? Yeah, so in a practical way, I like to use these two EQs, amp in to tone shape, amp out to volume level everything. You have to keep cutting these highs and lows though on both of them, or at least on the second one, I guess. But yeah, in the FX, I liked just using parametric EQs to cut very specific areas. Now, some changes with the Tone Studio one with these uses no pedals, so I turned on my booster tube screamer. This is about where you want to be. It'll about give you the same effect as a max level minimum drive neutral tone. It'll get you close to that. You can play around with it. I put on reverb, modulate. I didn't like the plate sound on this, so I used modulate, but I use a plate. I use an RV6 on a plate setting in real life. Let's see what I have. All the other dials on my RV6 are at 10 o'clock. And then when you select plate, that's about noon, because that's where the dial is when you're at plate. But this gets you a similar sound. It's kind of the effect's not that much. You can turn up the intensity, or the effect level, I mean. No solo, no contour on both of them. No pedal effects is off. I had to cut off the high end a lot more and bring back some low end a lot higher. For some reason, I don't know, my combination of pedals, which is in the front a Polytune 3 used as a buffer, into a TC Electronics Sentry noise gate using the 4-cable method, into an Ibanez TS9 tube screamer that goes into the front of the amp, then coming out the FX loop. It finishes off on the Sentry, and then the Sentry goes to my RV6 reverb, and then that goes back into the FX return in the amp. For some reason, that combination of things gives me a little more bass, and it tightens everything up. I can't figure out exactly why it's so tight, but it's good. But when you turn off the send return and hear everything through just the Katana, even when I simulate and I turn on a noise suppressor and minimum release and then the threshold what you need it to be, for some reason it just gives me a ton of this fizz high end, even though I've already cut it a bunch. So there's no end to how much you can cut it. I think that I've just come to the conclusion it's just not as tight when you don't use the real pedals, and I don't know exactly which pedal is doing it. I thought it was the noise suppressor, so I turned that off. It was still tight. So maybe it's the real tube screamer, or maybe it's the buffer. Maybe it's just the fact that everything's going through the effects loop and it's changing something, but for some reason it rolled off a lot of fizz, and that's why I didn't need to roll it off in my EQ that much, in my amp out EQ. So that's the difference in the settings. That's really the major difference, besides actually turning on the digital boost, the digital reverb, and the digital noise suppressor. If I could only have one real pedal, though, I'd probably use the real noise suppressor and the 4-cable method to tighten up the sound the best way. Probably followed by the real tube screamer. Those two things, they don't require a ton of things going on. Besides, you do need to have 4 cables. That's the problem. So you're spending like a good amount of money on 4 cables to get the noise suppressor to work correctly, and then you could just use this one. But I don't know. I think that's pretty much everything. When I use the this is the lamb chopper one. Let's just take a look at his settings. So he used chain 2. I don't know. That doesn't change anything, really, because his mod's off. So it's pretty much the same as chain 1 that I'm using, because he's not using a mod. His EQ, let's check the difference. Pretty similar to me. Let's check his volume EQ. A lot less dramatic changes. He doesn't have like enough bass coming through, I don't think. I don't think he has enough low end coming through. It's kind of too mid heavy on my system. But again, he's using a different speaker. So, and when he did that video, it came through his mic into YouTube. So there's a bunch of things going on. It's the sound's going into a mic, I assume, going into a software. So it's a sound that was built for you to listen to it and hear it. So my sound is more built for in the room, more of a live set idea. I really don't like his noise suppressor setting with the release at 50. I think you should just put that at 0. And he did use a parametric EQ in the effects, which is something that I would do. So that's cool. But I just don't understand. I don't understand. He didn't really do much here. So you could have just like not even used this. It wouldn't have changed anything. I mean, 1 decibel on a 1Q, 80 hertz, okay. 10 kilohertz high cut, that's kind of weird. It's kind of high if you're gonna even bother. Yeah, I bet you could turn this off and it wouldn't change the sound at all. I don't know why he used a delay. I don't use a delay. And I don't think this really does much anyways. I think when you turn it off, you're not going to notice a big difference. I thought his reverb was a little too intense, but maybe I'll listen to it again and be fine with it. Maybe I just didn't like this. Maybe I just don't like the sound of the reverb in Tone Studio. So the more of it, even if it's a good level and a good time, I just didn't like the sound, so I reduced it. Yeah, I just thought his sound was way too mid-heavy for the Waza speaker. But I liked his 40 presence. I liked the deep cab resonance. I liked the crunch channel. I thought he put way too much gain. I thought he put too much gain, but it's fine. And the volume's up higher, so you probably like it more in some way. So if you put that volume at 50, you get a similar effect. Yeah. I think that pretty much does it.